Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bethel Fernandez. I am Representative COABE, and I welcome you to the 90-minute webinar with Calpro. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dan Griffith with Essential Ed, our generous sponsor.
Thank you, Bethel. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. We were so excited to get the opportunity to sponsor this session in particular. At the very core of what Essential Education is all about, it's trying to increase engagement and results in adult ed students through distance and blended models. We try to learn as much as we can from the field and pack it into our software and our print materials and our professional development and everything that we do. So I have just a couple of slides to go over. First, I want to just note that one of the key aspects of our program is the adaptive learning. So when you're in a distance or blended learning model, the ability to focus the instruction specifically on what each student needs, to have the software adapt to their needs is really important because it reduces that time frame that students need to be studying, and it doesn't loop them into content that they've already seen. Secondly, is making the program accessible to all students. And I was thinking back, it was an interaction we had with Cerritos College in California that really started us down the road of 508 compliance in a very serious way. And I would encourage you, if you're looking for programs that are aligned with this ADA compliance and meet those needs of every learner, it's so critical that all students have the ability to access content effectively. We have done just a phenomenal job of it over the last year and a half. We have a VPAT you can request from us, and we would ask you to compare to anything else out there in the adult ed market. Additionally, 24/7 access from any device, mobile ready on any platform that you have. We want to make sure that students can, if it's 11:30 at night and they're getting 30 minutes to study, that they have a way to do it, whether it's on a phone or a tablet or a computer. Additionally, this is just true of all of our programs. So we're in the process right now of updating our work, money, and computer essentials programs. And one of the things I think you'll see today is that those digital skills are so important and sometimes a barrier and sometimes something that we really need to instruct with students. And we have a terrific program in our computer essentials program. Two other things, we have a teacher toolkit that's all about hybrid learning. You can go to go.essentialed.com/educators and then /get-toolkit. And there's all kinds of resources up there for you on creating engaging classrooms, tools that you can use, things you can download and try in your classroom. And then we also created a 6-part distance learning series to help teachers who are just entering into this area or maybe looking to increase their skills, everything from how you might want to set up your records management to some soft skills. We had 2 teachers who are distance learning teachers, one in Virginia and one in Texas, do sessions for us that were not scripted by us. They were their view of distance learning and how to make the most of it. And all of those are free resources for you to access to improve your skill set as you're looking to make the most of distance learning or hybrid learning in your classroom or your state. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to the wonderful team from California. Thank you to COABE for giving us this opportunity, and thank you to all of you in adult education for the phenomenal job that you do each day to help students reach their dreams and goals.
Well, thank you so much, Dan, and want to welcome everyone. It's great to see everyone putting their names in the chat and where you're from all over the country, and that's fantastic to see. I am Dr. Carolyn Zachary, and I am the State Director for Adult Education in California. Adult education is situated in the California Department of Education here in California. And I want to welcome you to this COABE presentation on increasing engagement and student persistence through distance and blended learning models. And now I'd like to introduce Marianne Fideli Mcleod from Calpro.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. And greetings, everyone. I want to, on behalf of the California Adult Literacy Professional Development Project, thank COABE very much for giving us an opportunity as a state team to present to you some of the work we did over the course of the pandemic last year. We're really very honored to share our findings, our practice. And today's webinar is a 90-minute session. I think it's a little bit longer than maybe the typical COABE session. And we really hope that you'll stay with us the whole 90 minutes that we're doing the session today. The last few slides, to begin, we're gonna really tell you about what we've done, both from our state level perspective and our program level perspective and our professional development perspective. And then at the end of this session, we would love to hear from you on some key questions that as a field together, we really need to think about, plan for, and address so that the great work that we've put together collectively across the country over the past year and a half is something that becomes really durable lessons that we can build from. So with that, I didn't formally introduce myself. I'm Marianne Fideli Mcleod, the managing director at the American Institutes for Research and the director of Calpro, which is a state TD project funded by California Department of Education. And joining me today are several of our California colleagues who were co-authors of the brief we're presenting on. So if it's okay for our state presenters, our California presenters to join us on screen, we're each going to introduce ourselves and then you're going to hear more from each of us. Stephanie.
Morning, everyone. Hello, and my name is Stephanie Kriebel. I am the Career Education Coordinator at San Mateo Adult and Career Education located in Northern California. Happy to be here with you.
Thanks, Stephanie. And Yusencia Lorenzo was having some technical difficulties. Yusencia, if you're on now, please feel free to unmute. And if you aren't, we will hope you can join us in a bit. Okay, with that, we'll go on. Penny Pearson. Penny, you might be muted.
I didn't find that button soon enough. Thank you. My name is Penny Pearson. I'm a coordinator for distance learning projects with the Outreach and Technical Assistance Network. We're a state leadership project in the state of California in Sacramento, California.
Christy.
Good morning, good afternoon. I think for some of you, my name is Christy Reyes and I am an ESL instructor in the non-credit program at Miracosta College in North San Diego County.
Toynbee.
Hello, everybody. My name is Toynbee Rublitis. I'm a principal at Corona Norco Adult School. It is in Southern California.
Thanks, Toynbee. And finally, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon Swain. I'm the superintendent for the Office of Correctional Education for the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, also known as the state prison system here in California.
Thank you very much. And thanks again to all of our California co-authors for being a part of this today. So once again, this session will go on for about 90 minutes. And we really want to hear from you throughout. The way to do that is to any questions you have for any of us at any time as we go through our presentations, please enter your questions in the Q&A box. Penny Pearson has graciously agreed to monitor that, and we're going to try and get back to you in real time. There might be an occasion or two throughout the session where we pause to answer questions, but we're going to try and be mindful of time, proceed, and also try and get back to you as soon as we can. There is the general chat function, and that some of you have used to greet us and each other today. Towards the end of the session, we're going to be doing some work in the chat box. So we'll be using that as part of the presentation later. So questions for any one of our presenters in Q&A, and then chat to engage and add to the session later on. Okay, so I'll keep going for just another minute here, and then I'm going to hand the baton off to Dr. Zachary once again. So to give a little context about our work, For decades, California adult ed has been really focused on how we can use technology to address changes, to how technology changes society, and in turn, how that affects the learning process. The main focus and some of the specific pieces of literature that have been developed over time are actually referenced in the Calpro brief, which is freely publicly available to you. A focus of our collective work in California over the years has been in three main areas: infrastructure, resources and access, uses for technology, so instruction, assessment, student information systems, and approaches to creating learning environments, distance learning, professional development, and communication mediums. So our purpose, with that background, that technology has been a major focus of our work in the state, and I know in your states too, over the decades. At the point of the beginning of the pandemic, we, like all of you, engaged in quite a big experiment of going almost completely to online education. And our purpose in writing this brief, when we agreed to do so several months ago, was to provide a contemporaneous account of how California adult ed rose to meet the challenges of continuing to serve adult learners during the pandemic. Screenshot, and please, we hope that you will go to the website and download this freely available brief. So the first part of any of our process in developing new materials through our California State Leadership projects is to really get an understanding of the evidence and what it tells us. So we began our work together by conducting a literature scan. And we really tried to focus the literature scan on very recent works to the greatest extent possible. So other pieces that provided an evidence base that would be really relevant in the context of the pandemic, or recent efforts to go to wide scale technology mediated instruction to inform our work. So in the brief, which includes a full reference list, there's a few findings we wanted to share with you today before we got to our practice. And I think the first thing that's really important to note is there is a limited body of evidence, and that's something that really needs to be developed and grown over the coming years. So part of what we hope the contribution of this article is to that effort to really understand better what works in the interest of moving learners ahead to meet their goals. And I wanted to start with this really, what I thought was an uplifting a quote from one of the resources we use, that in spite of the global challenge of COVID-19, the adult learning sector, while faced with difficult conditions, demonstrated resilience and going above and beyond, seeking learner-centered solutions to keep adult education in the reach of vulnerable groups. And I know in our work in California, and I also know through your work in your states, that I really think that our best side showed during this pandemic, and there was a real commitment to practice and learners throughout. So that was maybe a silver lining in this. Okay, the evidence base, what does it tell us? There are some known barriers and challenges to using distance learning with adult learners. First is the lack of access, and these are going to be things you already know. Lack of access to reliable internet connection and high quality technology, limited digital literacy for students as well as instructors in some cases. Then there are the traditional barriers, which in some ways are exacerbated or can be exacerbated through distance learning. So students still have conflict with childcare schedules, work schedules, and other family obligations. Unique challenges associated with conducting all the things we need to do to get students in the door and placed in classes. We had to create some work-throughs on, so recruitment, orientation, and assessment, and then offering and managing the essential support services and wraparound services. there are promising practices associated with each one of those known barriers. Schools have reported success with creating lending libraries of technology. Let's see, with creating, in terms of students' digital literacy, creating videos that support students to navigate platforms and build their digital literacy skills. In terms of meeting some of those traditional barriers, there's the benefit of distance learning in terms of adding accessibility and flexibility to the busy adult learner's life. So having more opportunities to engage in education rather than fewer by virtue of going virtual. There is a burgeoning world and success with advertising on social media platforms in service to student recruitment. And then workarounds and work-throughs in terms of orientation. So that can be done virtually, scheduled in small groups. And again, it has prompted a relook at how we conduct these services at the offset. And then wraparound services, a digital platform to share information about wraparound services, to offer counseling and tutoring, and taking advantage again of that built-in flexibility and accessibility that you get from operating at a distance. So that's a very brief look at the evidence base. Again, I would really ask you to go to the article, download it, and to read more in full about each one of those items, the barriers and the promising practices that may address them. What we do know is that under the circumstance of the pandemic and in terms of having a forward-looking vision to create policy and to support implementation of distance learning, leadership matters. And so with that, to lead us off into a discussion of what has taken place in the state of California, and then later on, how we see things moving ahead into the future, we're going to hear from our state level participants today. So leadership matters, action taken at the state level to clear the way for services to continue and even improve during the pandemic. And so with that, I'm going to hand back over to Dr. Zachary from California Department of Education to lead us off. And Carolyn, you may be muted.
You're right, Marianne. Thank you. I was muted. So thank you very much for that introduction and all of the laying the groundwork for our presentation today. So, you know, there are days that we have in our lifetime that we always remember, right? And of course, tomorrow we have 9/11. So we all probably remember where we were on 9/11, or when the Challenger shuttle exploded. But so I remember those dates, but I'm also always going to remember Friday the 13th, 2020, as the day that we pivoted, and we pivoted very quickly in California. We are extremely fortunate to have 3 strong state leadership projects that we support and fund through our WIOA Title II dollars. We couldn't do the work that we do in the state of California without the support of Calpro, OTAN, and CASAS. So on that fateful Friday, during the week, things had been picking up with COVID, and we were hearing some schools were thinking about shutting down, but it really hit home on that 13th when we were hearing from all of our adult schools across the state. Everyone's phone was ringing. We're closing next week. We don't know what to do. What's going to happen? We need to go to online. And so I called a meeting of our state leadership projects that day and CDE staff and said, okay, let's put our heads together. What are we going to do next week? And then what are we going to do the week after and the week after and the week after? And so during those first several weeks and months, we had weekly calls to see where we were. Everyone rolled up their sleeves and pitched in to help out. Calpro and OTAN went back and looked in archives to see what they had to help teachers move to online instruction. What training did we need for our teachers? And that was first and foremost in our minds, was we have to get our teachers trained so that then our students can continue to learn. And so that was where we focused all of our energy, really those first several weeks in that first month, was what trainings can we provide to our instructors? And so thanks to Calpro and OTAN, you know, we and our vision in California for adult education, it was really distance learning is a significant part of that. And so we already had resources, but they weren't to the level of what we needed them for the pandemic. And so we took old resources and old webinars and deployed those. We set up a web page that was strictly for COVID, and it had all of the resources that were coming out. It would change almost on a daily basis with resources coming out from the federal government, from the state government, from our office, from our state leadership projects. So it was a very fluid page that we encouraged everyone to visit every day. And then as that week progressed, or the next week progressed, OTAN, Calpro really stepped it up to do some in online trainings for teachers that on Google Classroom, on how to use Zoom, on how to use whatever platform, you know, we thought agencies were going to be using. They worked to figure that out, and OTAN, with their technology background, were able to, I apologize for the dog barking, were able to really help our instructors. They even did, and this was really a great thing, they did office hours for teachers, and teachers could get online, get on Zoom, and Penny and Netta from OTAN, they would answer whatever questions those teachers had or whatever technology issues they were having so that they could feel comfortable in their classrooms. Then we also heard from our agencies and what our agencies were doing in the field. They were having, you know, drive up and sign out a laptop. They were handing out laptops in parking lots. They were mobilizing to ensure that their students could continue their learning. And with that, we continued our regular communication to the field. I was doing a weekly letter out to the field, reminding them of the resources, reminding them of the support, being their cheerleader, because of what they were doing was really that heavy lift in the field to ensure that our students' learning could continue. And the other piece that was really important for all of us at the state level and with our state leadership projects was flexibility. And everyone's willingness to be flexible and find ways to support the field were tremendous. And I just can't thank all of them enough for everything that they did to ensure that once our teachers were trained, our students and felt comfortable, the student learning could continue. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Penny Pearson from OTAN.
Thank you, Carolyn. And OTAN, as the Outreach and Technical Assistance Network here in California, we're really, as Carolyn mentioned, very much at the forefront of responding to this call to action after the stay-at-home order was put into place, because we really did need to find those ways to support teachers, support administrators, do whatever we could to help them. So as first and foremost with that, not only were we cobbling from materials we already had, but we were also looking at specifics to help teachers in terms of what they needed to do in the field to get themselves up and running and comfortable with this new way of instruction. And so all of these different workshops and webinars, and I'll talk a little bit about our OTAN office hours. Within a very short period of time, we had served over 8,600 teachers, educators between March of 2020 through June of 2020. And we felt very proud of that. We were run a little ragged by the end of the program year, but we were able to really serve the adult education field, not only with those 1 hour or 90-minute webinar workshops, or what we called virtual workshops, but also that piece that Dr. Zachary spoke of regarding our OTAN office hours. And that provided a really popular way for teachers to have a place to just drop in, and they could kind of vent a little bit. They were worried, they were concerned about all kinds of things. And technology, of course, was one of them, because many of these teachers, they stopped teaching on that Friday the 13th in their classroom, and on Monday they were supposed to teach remotely. So there was a little anxiety there. So being able to provide that type of service where they could just drop in and they could ask us any kind of question, from something, that someone who's very well versed in technology may think, wow, you should have known that already. But no, not necessarily. It just depended on the context that they were coming from. So we found that not only did we have a very high following of people coming to those OTAN office hours, we got a bit of a fandom going on there where they just come just to listen, because they were finding out and learning new things beyond what that original question may have been at the beginning. And what we saw with that is that on many occasions, and this is very anecdotal, so take it that way, but we had teachers that would come back repeatedly to these office hours and looking for help. And they might be working on the same thing, right? But by the time that they got that to that point of success, it was very heartening to hear them say, oh, well, I can do this, and gain that confidence and gain those necessary technology skills, which then, of course, they're turning around and passing on to their learners as well. We continued these efforts with the field throughout the next year. And for that program year for 21-22, we still served over 6,900 educators in those different formats. We've just relaunched and started our office hours again. In fact, one of them is going on as I speak. And we'll see how the field responds, if they still feel this is something they would like, even under these uncertain times at the moment of sometimes people are face-to-face, sometimes they're not. So we really look to find ways to help teachers keep their learners engaged. That was a lot of our focus in helping teachers understand how they can reach out to their learners. And we found many different ways to do it. It could be something like a Padlet, or using Flipgrid, or using Kahoot or quizzes, but helping them learn how they could use those in this virtual environment, typically over something like Zoom, what we're using today. And don't think that we didn't fall back to the old-fashioned ways. There was many times where it was just like, you know what, you got to call your learners on a landline, and connect with them and reestablish that relationship. And we saw that, and we found this again through a project that we run, which is called our Digital Leadership Academy. This is a 2-year professional development project that we run within OTAN. And at the time of the stay-at-home order, we were just finishing with one cohort. They were going to graduate and be done in May of 2020. So at the time of the stay-at-home order, they had gone through about 3/4 of the program, and they'd already had established what we call an implementation plan for online distance learning, and as it needed to be applied to their agency. And they were very comfortable in this switch. They were literally within a week, they had turned their teachers, they became the leaders at their schools. They helped their teachers turn to this virtual environment. And they were very smooth and effortless in moving into this online or remote teaching paradigm that they were now in. And I would like to share with you some of those reports, because they talk about this in what they did, how they did it, and realized that this is not a problem. It wasn't difficult. But if they hadn't had some of that training and that support, it might have been a different story. So I think that we really look to long-term professional development, because it helps those particular groups. We were serving several adult education agencies with this project. We've expanded it this year to serve even more, to help them be prepared and confident that they have the tools that they need in order to be flexible in these teaching environments, because we've seen that that's really not stopped, right? We've still have to be flexible, and we've already heard it before from Marianne as well. So I think that within our bubble, within OTAN, and how we worked with our other leadership projects, such as Calpro and with the State Department, we were able to really help serve and flex the field as needed to this particular online environment. So I hope you can take a moment to get an idea of what this particular professional development project looked like, but also look at the successes that those teams did when literally over a week they moved from face-to-face to online. I think you'll find the information very interesting. And other than that, if there's any other questions, because I haven't been able to monitor the Q&A while I've been speaking, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And I will then turn it over to Shannon Swain.
Well, hello there. I thought it might be beneficial for all of you to have a little context into what is going on in California state prison system. So within our system, we have 34 separate prisons, and they are geographically dispersed across a pretty large state. So from the Oregon border all the way down to the border of Mexico, we have these various prisons. And each of these prisons is very different. They have different security missions, from high security, condemned row at San Quentin to minimum support facilities and community-based sort of correctional facilities as well. And if you can imagine 3-foot thick granite walls and what kind of challenges they present to bringing in technology, you have an idea of some of the things that we had to deal with. So on that fateful day, really almost, immediately, we had to figure out how we were going to continue to serve the roughly 93,000 incarcerated adults in our California prisons. The Office of Correctional Education has approximately 1,600 teachers and staff across the state. 40 of those staff are at my office in Sacramento at headquarters, and our responsibilities are to support those WASC accredited schools. So each of our prisons has a complete school with a principal, an assistant principal, and various staff members. We provide academic education from adult basic education 1, so essentially non-readers, all the way to college. And we have 28 men earning their bachelor's degree next month while incarcerated. So really a huge scope in terms of serving in the academic arena. And we have 20 different CTE trades. So those include a variety of things like construction related trades, plumbing, HVAC, basic construction, electronics, putting those electrical works together. We have solar-based technology. We have computer technology classes. We have just a wide variety of CTE programs that lead to an industry certification. So these are not hobby shops. These are classes. And supporting those students out there was a huge priority for us. However, just as Dr. Zachary stated and Penny stated, the first thing we had to do was to work with our teachers and reassure them. Because what happened with CDCR is that almost immediately the institutions closed down. So our teachers were deemed non-essential in the beginning. I would argue that they are essential. However, the corrections side of the house said, no, we have to limit the number of folks going in and out of our institutions so teachers stay home. Well, with 1,600 staff and teachers, you can imagine there were varying degrees of both technical expertise, internet connectivity ability, tools. In many cases, they didn't have the tools they needed. So we had to really very quickly come up with ways to support our teachers and learners. So the first thing we did was we met daily. For the first month, we had daily meetings of my staff. We got the principals across the state to come in once a week on these calls to talk about what was going on at their specific institution. Because initially the response to the pandemic varied a bit between institutions. Every single day, the California state government operations, or GovOps as we call it, held meetings, and they were consulting with the Department of Public Health. They were trying to determine safety protocols and coming up with mask requirements and social distancing requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And a kind of an additional complication is that in addition to the state level advisory sort of role, as well as state standards for social distancing and masking, et cetera, each county public health department had a say in how things were going to be implemented within that county. And with 34 prisons, they're almost all in different counties. So we were dealing with all of this information coming at us. What's true in San Diego County might be a little bit different in Los Angeles County, et cetera. So communication was paramount, and communicating on a regular basis, initially daily, then weekly, and ongoing with our staff and teachers was extremely important. Now, for our students, it was mission critical for us that they be able to continue to learn despite being locked down in their housing units and unable to go to class. So we immediately began independent learning, or as I hate to say it, packet-based learning. So our teachers needed access to various resources, curricular resources, et cetera, so that they could put together individualized learning packets for each student that they serve in both CTE and academic education. So this was a massive effort. And one of the things that we did was my staff at headquarters put together immediately within a week, pulled every possible curricular resource that's out there for adult learners and put it all together so that our teachers had a place to go to access whatever they could access to help their students continue to learn. And that's where this partnership, this amazing partnership with Calpro, with OTAN, with CASAS was so important, because each of those organizations has various supports for teachers. And so we had a lot of teachers that were taking classes through OTAN that were enrolled in Calpro academies and courses. It was very, very helpful. Additionally, we had, of course, the challenge of not every teacher having the same level of technology access at their homes. So we had loaner computers that went out to those teachers that didn't have access. Trying to remember, we have, in addition to academic and CTE, my office is responsible for library services for all of these institutions. And we have legal and recreational libraries. So those libraries had to resort to what we call paging. So because our incarcerated folks were not allowed to leave their cells, they had to submit a paper request to the librarian that were considered essential, by the way, and then those requests were filled and those books and resources were sent to cell. So it was quite a juggling that occurred, I'm sure, in similar ways to each of you. The other, I would say, way that we really worked to meet our student and teacher needs is through professional development. And within the first 3 months from OCE, which is the Office of Correctional Education, we delivered over 60 specific professional learning opportunities, and many times concurrently. So we would have a group doing an online course related to automotive repair. And we also had curricular resources, delivering professional learning on professional learning communities, or reading instruction for vocabulary development. Really ran the gamut. And then I think another really important piece was, in addition to resources and communication, was the website. So as with Dr. Zachary, the Department of Corrections Rehabilitation put up a website specific to COVID and the pandemic. And so it provided responses. Thousands and thousands of questions came in every day from family members that were very concerned about their loved ones, et cetera, to state legislators that wanted to know what was going on with the prison in their district. So this website was updated every day with what we call the roadmap to reopening. And this roadmap to reopening really determined how much access at each institution was allowed. And so I would say for the first 8 or 9 months, these institutions were locked down. And slowly but surely, once the levels of positive cases went down, then access began to open up. So this website really was very important for us to communicate where we were. And then, I want to really end this on a positive note. There have been many positive rainbows that came out of this incredibly difficult and horrible pandemic. One of the things that has occurred for us is that we are now able to look at technology solutions where our enterprise folks were resistant because of security concerns before. So because of this situation, it has really increased the speed at which we're able to implement technology-based solutions. So on July 1, which is the beginning of our budget year, we are now funded to roll out laptops for every single student in education throughout the state. So we have 39,000 laptops that will be going out to the field for our students. They're going to use them initially in classrooms, and then eventually, once we get the regs figured out, et cetera, they'll be able to take those back to their cells and their housing units, check them out, write their papers, upload their work via learning management system, and submit it. We have 14,000 students in college, so it was really important for us to be able to use that LMS for our college students. So again, because of this pandemic, we have beefed up the infrastructure. There's a lot of forward progress with technology. So over the next I guess it's a 4-year rollout plan, we'll be deploying these tools that will really increase our ability to have electronic solutions to problems. So I think I've talked enough. I could go on all day because I love this work. I live for it. But I'm going to turn it back over to the amazing Marianne and let her take it from there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And I think, it's corrections education is sometimes overlooked in the types of large conference settings. And I know we've been remediating that, and COABE's been a big part of focusing on corrections education over the past few years. So I think it's really a tremendous addition to include as much as you have about the unique environment of corrections education in California. So thank you. And with that, let's see if this works. Oh, good, it does. So with that, we're going to now switch gears. Penny, I know you're looking through the Q&A and maybe chat even for any questions that pop up. Right now, I'm going to invite our California practitioner panelists to join by video, and everybody's had a chance to, you've had a chance to introduce yourselves. The way we thought that this could work best for you all who are joining us today is as a panel format, and for each of our panelists, Stephanie, Christy Reyes, and Toybe, And Essentia, if you are here, please feel free to join in at any time. Again, I know there's tech difficulties happen. So without further ado, I'll pose the questions to our panelists, and they have each graciously agreed to kind of juggle a few at a time. So we really appreciate that. And again, we sort of constructed this session so that those of you, I saw many of you joining from state offices, you'd have a chance to really hear directly from state staff. And those of you, the many more of you who are program staff, have a chance to sort of tune in most closely to our practitioner panel. We really want all of you to stay, and you're going to be hearing from Dr. Zachary and Penny Pearson once again, and we have questions for you at the end. So on the traditional barriers of adult education, those posed uniquely in the distance learning environment, I'm going to invite our panelists, I guess maybe one or two of you at a time, to provide some input on both the context of your program, info about your students, the type of program you run, and how you addressed these challenges during the past year and a half. So for question one, how did your program address the lack of access to reliable internet connection and functional devices for students as well as instructors? Toibi, would you be willing to jump in?
Yes, thank you. First of all, yes, my school serves about 3,000 students. It's a medium-sized Southern California school. And I have to say that, like Dr. Zachary said, leadership matters. Our California leadership providing Calpro, OTAN, and CASAS. Our school has always been one for the last many years to take advantage of every little professional development that these three leadership projects provide. So when the pandemic hit, just like Penny said, OTAN had that Digital Leadership Academy. So we had three of our school teachers who were interested in technology attend those sessions, and they were the ones who were ready to graduate when the pandemic hit. So the three of them just took it upon themselves to roll it and be the leaders in the school to get a group of teachers each, 8 teachers or 10 teachers each, and then they just held their hands and ran with it. So I do have to mention that before I answer the question. To answer the question, of course, the action that our school took was a swift action to collaborate with our partners to address the need for our students, digital devices, technology, and internet connection. The way we did this was by partnering, number 1, with the district, number 2, with our public library, and 3, with the Workforce Development Board in our county. So the district, how do we work with our district? When we heard about the pandemic and we realized our students are going to need digital devices, we immediately went to the district and said, here's the amount of funds we are left with from our budget. Can you get us devices immediately? And so our IT team, we had very good partnership with them. They already said, here are 200 device Chromebooks that we have left. You guys can use this. And of course, we used adult ed funds to pay for those, and those transfers worked out perfectly with our collaboration. Secondly, we went to our Corona Public Library and said, can you provide devices for our students and internet? So we collaborated with the library, and we had devices that they were giving for every student that enrolled through the library. Thirdly, our consortium lead went to the Riverside Workforce Development Board and requested for a portion of the CARES Act funds. And so the Riverside County supervisors provided $1 million to the About Students Consortium to provide digital devices and hotspots. And that's how we made best use of what we could to swiftly convert to online classes.
Thank you very much, Toibi. And Stephanie, would you mind also saying a word about how your program addressed this need?
Yes, thank you. So again, we are San Mateo Adult and Career Education. We are located in San Mateo County, which is located within the San Francisco Bay Area in Northern California. We are the largest adult school in our consortium, which is made up of the 5 adult schools within our county and the 3 community colleges. Pre-pandemic, we were serving about 3,500 students. That number did drop during the pandemic, as it did at many schools. And currently we're serving about 1,500 students, but our numbers are starting to slowly creep back up. We have 4 program areas: career education, English as a second language, high school diploma and GED, and our active adults community program. So we are a pretty large school. And you know, before the pandemic, we had started a technology committee probably a few years prior, when, you know, we started talking about doing more distance learning, using Google Classroom and other tools that were becoming available, particularly in our ESL program. You know, and how could we meet the needs of the students through technology? And so we already had our technology committee in place when the pandemic hit, and they just worked tirelessly throughout the, you know, when the shutdown happened, to provide to come up with a plan to provide basic technology instruction through both group and one-on-one tutoring sessions for all of our staff, to help them, you know, learn the Zoom technology, get, you know, receive training in how to use Google Classroom, Quizlet, all of the tools that have been becoming, you know, are becoming more and more common in the classroom. And so I just want to give a shout out to our technology committee for all of their efforts. Now, as far as accessibility, we received money from the CARES Act, which enabled us to purchase hotspots. And plus we added hotspots, which we issued to all of our instructors, and then some students. Plus we added Wi-Fi boosters in our parking lot so that students could access the internet on our campus from either our outside seating areas or their cars. So that was a really big change for us. We also had existing classroom laptops that had been purchased prior to the pandemic by our student council. So we were able to use those to distribute those to our staff and some students. We also used additional CARES money to purchase an additional 100 Chromebooks. And we received laptop donations from the high school district, of which we're a part, which we were able to then loan out to staff and students. And all of this was done through our staff-led outdoor distribution events.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And thank you, Toibi. So it sounds like partnership, collaboration, and really strategic use of available funds. Thank you so much for sharing that. Our second question: how did your program address and build students' digital literacy skills so they could be successful in online learning environments? And Christy, it would be great if you could elaborate on your program's approach to that.
Sure. Hi again, everybody. First, before I answer that question, I just want to say kudos to all of you here. The fact that you're here means you're probably still employed. And so that shows great efforts that you've taken over this past year and a half to keep the instruction going for adult learners. So thank you for that. And also, I just want to express appreciation, and I'm in awe of our adult learners across the country who've shown so much grit. And I think it's a testament to how much they value what we offer in adult ed. So yes, to address the question about digital literacy of our students, well, in my program, which is a non-credit ESL program of MiraCosta College, which is located on coastal North San Diego County here in California, our ESL program has about 1,000 students. We did drop enrollment there for a bit, but now it's picked up quite heavily, and so many students who had not been able to join our classes before are now coming to join our classes because we are still offering remote instruction. We're not in person yet. So we also are housed under a pretty large continuing education umbrella that also includes an adult high school diploma program, courses for adults with disabilities, short-term vocational, as well as courses for older adults in the community. So long before the pandemic in my department, our students' digital literacy was a very high priority, as was tech integration training for our teachers. Our teachers have long been active in PD offerings from OTAN. A couple have participated in the special distance learning academies that are provided by OTAN. Our teachers were taking advantage of tech training offered by the college and other professional development organizations. So we were pretty strong with that. We make that an emphasis, and we look for tech integration when we're hiring new teachers. So we also are really lucky to have really great resources and equipment. Our main site has computer labs, and almost every class has scheduled time each week to visit the computer labs. Our offsites have tablet carts, as well as some of the classrooms on our main site. So over the years, we've been offering two levels of courses for our ESL students on computers and digital literacy. And in addition, at our higher levels of ESL, our teachers were already using for the past 5 years our college's learning management system, Canvas, for either blended learning, and we've also been offering some hybrid courses for quite a few years. So our teachers had training on using Google Suite. They were integrating docs, slides, Google Sites, the internet in general. So the new tool for our continuing students to learn was Zoom. That was how we were delivering and still are delivering our synchronous courses. So the transition was not too daunting for our continuing students, a little bit more challenging for our beginning ESL students, but they're catching on. It's amazing to see one of my colleagues that we communicate a lot with. She teaches the level 1 pre-literacy. Her students were logging into Canvas before the course began. So it does take a lot of work. It does. Let's not kid around. But with that work comes great, results. So for our new students that have never been in our program, and as I said, we've attracted a lot, our teachers worked very hard on onboarding, creating emails to send out to students before they join the first class meeting, video introductions, video tutorials, a liquid syllabi to send out to students before the class began to give them a preview and to get to know the instructor a bit. Detailed instructions for entering Zoom, logging into the LMS, and so on. And so in the last year, we have seen tremendous growth in our students' digital literacy skills. And what I like to see is their growth in their confidence in using technology.
Thank you so much, Christy. And Christy, I think we were thinking of you also for this next question, and
Sure.
as well as you, Stephanie. So maybe since you're unmuted, our third question: how did your program address the traditional barriers to education, such as work schedules, childcare, family obligations?
Right. Well, we all know these barriers have been around since we began offering adult ed, right? So to accommodate students with the remote instruction so they could overcome these barriers that became magnified, let's face it, kids at home, work schedules shifting here and there. We had to modify a bit our successful managed enrollment model. We had to make it more flexible. So we went from mostly managed enrollment classes to 100% open enrollment offerings. I think that flexibility, though, really has paid off. And so something that we always do in our efforts to help our understand the expectations and obligations of school and workplaces, we have our teachers include in the syllabi, and we have in our orientation as well, very clear instructions to students that you need to communicate with your teachers about absences. You can't, this is not open entry, open exit. It's open entry. We don't want you to exit, basically. So in keeping with that, our teachers have really adapted, become more flexible, and they're recording their synchronous Zoom class meetings for students to view later if they have work or family obligations or other schedule conflicts that take them away from class. So anecdotally, all you teachers who are here today, I'm sure you've had these same experiences. In my own class, students, especially it tends to be the female students who are at home with young kids, they were so appreciative of not having to pay for childcare, and they learned to mute themselves on Zoom very quickly. On the other hand, I had a student who has started and stopped out of our program so many times over the years. And that's because he's a model immigrant in that he has successful businesses. He's the owner of 2 sushi restaurants. So he was finally able to finish my course. He would prop up his phone in the kitchen of one of his restaurants and participate while chopping fresh fish. So I think this shows we really need to rethink how we're offering our courses for more flexibility to accommodate our students' really difficult schedules and all the barriers that they have. So yeah, I'm sure you've had similar experiences. So basically, these accommodations have had a really positive effect on our students' overall average persistence. So we kind of define that as students starting and finishing a term. And we've had great with our managed enrollment over the years. For 15 years, we've had 80% hovering right around there, persistence. And I'm so happy. I just looked at the data last night, and for the 2021 school year, our average student persistence was 91% because they had all these different ways they could participate in class. So currently, the majority of our classes are at capacity. Some have wait lists. And this is no reduction of course offering numbers that we've had in the past several years. So, you know, there are some students who've walked away and may not come back until we offer in-person classes because that's their preference, but clearly offering different modes to participate in class is something we really need to think about.
Thank you so much, Christy. And I am, in the interest of time, which I'm keeping track of, I think, Stephanie, it would be great if you could say a word to this question, and I think we'll stay with you into question 4, and so that we can make sure that we have time for all of our participants to also weigh in. For questions 4 and 5, we might do one panelist response. But so Stephanie, if you could please say a word about how your program addressed these traditional barriers, and then we'll go right to the next question.
Yeah, and I just want to say that was a great story about your student in the sushi restaurant, Christy. I love that. So, you know, actually, through all the collaborative efforts of our entire staff, we were able to pivot to fully remote instruction across all of our programs. So I'm going to speak to with regard to our career education program, which we were really just starting to launch our health career training programs when the pandemic hit. They were scheduled to be fully in person, and we had to really take a step back and reevaluate how we were going to provide these training programs. We were in a pilot phase. And so what we ended up doing was we rolled out some hybrid programs instead, where we combined the lecture portion of the classes online via Zoom during the week. And then also we included a handful of full day Saturday in-person lab skills days that, you know, and this was in the fall semester. So, and we, you know, practiced the social distancing and had all of the COVID protocols in place, and we're able to do that in person. And what ended up happening was this is for our clinical medical assisting class and our pharmacy tech class, we ended up graduating 100% of our students out of those programs in this hybrid format. And based on feedback from all of those graduates, and while they said they enjoyed the in-person skills labs the most, we did learn that this model versus a fully in-person model was better for them because it helped them to be able to access the trainings from home or another remote location, maybe work or school, made it easier for them to not have to find childcare or navigate rush hour traffic, which can be really challenging where our school is located. And, you know, just frankly, they didn't have to experience all of the stress involved in all of that, which allowed them to be more present in their classes. And so because of the, and also, like I said, it fit better into their work and school schedules if they had them. Because of this success, we have decided to continue to offer these training programs using these models. Also for our professional communications and business office technology industry certification courses, we were already partnering with the ICEV Multimedia to offer these courses through their platform. So while we had them established as an in-person and the business office technology was fully in-person and professional communications was still set up as a hybrid, it was very easy transition through the use of that platform to go fully online. And as such, we're currently experimenting by offering both of these classes, both in person and online, to see what ends up being the preference for our students. And as of today, both the online and in-person classes are seeing successful enrollments.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And again, I'm being mindful of time because I know we have a little bit more we want to present and we want to hear from our participants. So if the panelists agree, Toybi, it would be wonderful if you could rejoin us by video. And question 4, if this works for you all, how did your program conduct remote recruitment, orientation, and assessment at a distance?
Yes, for everything we use Zoom. So everybody had to learn to use Zoom immediately. And just like some of my panelists had already mentioned, we also had to create a lot of short little videos to send to our participants who had never heard about Zoom before, with their little message with the email saying that this is how you log on, this is how you do this. If you have any problems, call us this number. So orientation, recruitment, and assessment were all done through Zoom. For recruitment, what we did was we used the Microsoft Forms, which made it very easy for students to respond to. And we had a team that worked very hard on getting automation that went directly to the program coordinators. So after students responded, we directed the responses based on the program the students who are interested to the program coordinators, and they then either used a phone to call students depending on the level of technology, digital literacy of the students. And then the same thing, orientations were all done by Zoom. For higher level students, it was easier just to set it up and they just run it themselves. Nobody had to be there with them because we had a video YouTube there. Whereas for the younger, lower level EL students, we had to really go with them step by step. And even the assessments, we were first among the first few who agreed to pilot with CASAS the remote testing. So we had teachers who were doing remote testing from home with 10 different laptops, trying to get as many students tested as possible. So despite the pandemic, we were still able to get a lot of remote tests for our students, both for CASAS as well as EL Civics. Of course, it all had to do with the fact that we already had a well-trained team of 3 to 5 teachers because of OTAN's, the DLAC, and all the other support that we have been provided ahead of time.
Thank you so much, Toybi. And I'd like to go to the last question. And Christy, I think we have you for, you raised your hand at some point to, I think, wrap us up for this. How did your program offer and manage support services, and what was most needed and valuable?
Sure. Well, we have a wealth of support services for our students. We have a tutoring center. We have a writing center. We have academic counselors. We have mental health counselors. this is kind of the benefit of being part of a larger college, I have to say. So the way that we offer that is that we, first of all, send out emails, and there are these really colorful, bright flyers, but students don't always pay attention to email. So we post it in the LMS and we ask teachers to announce these things. And so there are all of these resource people waiting in Zoom at set hours of each day, twiddling their thumbs until students come and enter. So students just have to click. They already know Zoom. They click and they enter. They say what kind of help they need. I forgot to mention, we even have career counselors. So then they can talk one-to-one in a breakout room with any of the other, the various supports that we offer. Most needed, honestly, we also have the CARES Act. There has been some food insecurity. So we have in our area some local agriculture. And so there's a farmer's market about every couple of weeks. And it's announced to the students where they can come and pick up free food. And then we've also had some students with really large back, pay that they owe for their rent, as well as other things that they owe. So our college has this up to $1,500 one-time gift that we are able to give out to students to help them with whatever financial needs they may have.
And I would say that is a great note to end on for this panelist presentation. Christy, Stephanie, Toybe, thank you so much, because as practitioners and leaders in your organizations, I know your time is really booked up. And I will say to all of you who've joined us, you can read in the brief much more detail about how each one of these programs addressed each one of the main questions we explored. And so with that, I think we want to go from what has taken place and what's worked and what the challenges were to what the future holds. And with that, I want to hand it back to Dr. Zachary.
Thank you very much, Marianne. And thank you to our panelists for all of that great information. It's wonderful to hear everything that was happening in the field. So what's going to happen next? Well, I've been saying this for quite a while, and the first thing is we're not going back. So what I mean is, yes, we're going back into the classrooms, but we're not going back to the way we delivered instruction prior to March 13th, 2020. We're looking forward to how we can expand our programs and expand the services that we are delivering to students, that we give them the opportunity to learn at the hours of the day that work for them. Again, it goes back to that flexibility and the importance of flexibility in our programming. So offering hybrid classes, having the opportunity for students who have wonderful attendance, but then on one day have a childcare issue and can't make it into class, but a teacher can turn on the Zoom that day and that student can still participate. So students aren't losing any of their learning, and they're continuing to move forward. And that actually will help our persistence rates increase as well, because we're allowing that flexibility for our students. Professional development, we want to continue and expand and grow the professional development that we're offering to not just our teachers, but also to all adult education staff, so that they're prepared to assist students in many different ways. I know that we at the Department of Education in my office, we try and model some of the technology that we're asking that our schools are using. So as Penny talked earlier about Padlet and Quizlet and all these different tools out there, we try and use those in presentations that we're doing with the field. So things such as Mentimeter, we're doing a new administrator orientation, and we just used Mentimeter, or I did for the first time this week on Monday. And when we wrap up our training for our new administrators, I'm going to use Zoom Annotate for the first time. And so again, it's being sure that we're modeling these tools so that people can see that we're comfortable with them as well. But again, continuing professional development. Being able to do remote testing for as long as Octave is going to allow us to do that, and having that again as an option for our students. And then really ensuring that all of this whole piece about moving forward and sustaining distance learning, to me, is all wrapped into equity. And it's really providing equity for our students, expanding services for our students. And equity is a large focus of the Adult Education Office at the California Department of Education. And we believe that hybrid instruction, distance learning, online learning, whatever we want to call it, is really going to help our students to reach their goals and see their dreams and help their families.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And I believe we're going now to, on the topic of professional development, my colleague Penny Pearson from OTAN. If you could say a word about what's next from your point of view in professional development, so that we're even better and getting more effective in what we do.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. I think, you know, as we've gone through this, we're all trying to be reflective and effective. And some of these are just ideas and concepts surrounding how we approach professional development with our teachers. And I personally put empathy and understanding as one of the first things, because we've put a great, a great weight on our teachers in doing all of these different things all at once. And they're pedaling as fast as they can. And, you know, some of them just need a rest. They need a break, and they need that understanding that sometimes these things aren't going to just be assimilated. It does take time. But we also need to provide the supports for them. So what could those real-time supports look like? So, you know, I would refer back to what OTAN did with the online open office hours. Could that be something that you could offer your teachers within your organization in some way to let them know that there is a place for them to go to get the resources they need and the help that they need? Real time is really nice, but maybe it's something different. Maybe it's scheduled professional development, like a learn at lunch or some type of coffee cafe. And I mean, we had some of our teachers that were like, they got together amongst themselves, like a learning management or a PLC, where they were like, let's have coffee and chocolate or something. And they would be able to talk about, the things that they were working through. Also, the communication piece, you heard Dr. Zachary mention that before, of, send out information to help your teachers, send out celebrations. There's nothing finer than a teacher being recognized for the hard work that they do. And sometimes that can get lost when everybody's scrambling. So these are just things that can provide some of that support and acknowledgement to the work that your teachers are doing, as well as be an opportunity to tell them of the additional opportunities they have to learn more. The intensive short-term professional development, sometimes that can be very effective when it's very short and it's very targeted. So you make a decision about what are those pieces that your teachers, that you want them to embrace, that you want them to incorporate, because that short term doesn't seem like, I know for some of our participants, when they participate in our Digital Leadership Academy, that's 2 years. That's a 2-year commitment. And sometimes that light at the end of the tunnel looks pretty dim when they're going to be done. But a short burst that it's guided and it's targeted to something in particular can keep those teachers engaged, and they can then be more involved and participatory and even a leader in other longer term professional development that you may have. The other one here, that this is what I've heard from teachers who felt like they were getting a bit overwhelmed with not knowing what was going on, right? So, and what they needed to do and how they should do it. So that whole beginning of year process, though, make sure that your teachers have what they need. So, and that can be a variety of things, right? I'm not talking about just technology, but maybe they don't have all the resources they need. Maybe they don't have the right pieces of equipment, or not equipment, but curriculum. And looking at, you know, in this day and age of, do they have the necessary things they need to protect themselves? So the personal protective equipment, do they have hand sanitation? And I know all of us have those, but sometimes teachers don't understand perhaps the procedure or the policy. And that's at no fault of anyone. It's just the nature of our time right now, I think. And then, so by asking those questions, you're starting to establish those communications that I spoke about earlier as well. And then the resources that are offered by your state. Now, California is fortunate in that we do have these leadership projects, and we do get directives from our State Department of Education for adult education to do particular types of projects and professional development and reaching out to our constituency in terms of our teachers. But if you have those available, announce them, be able to do something that says, look, there are resources available to you. Please take advantage of them. They're there for you for that reason. And then this last one, I think is more of what Marianne was talking about earlier about, and I'll let her speak to it herself, but I completely agree with this. So I'm going to let her speak to it.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. I think we've all gotten more equipped to engage in online PD, and it just like our adult learners benefit from flexibility and accessibility, so do teachers. So really leveraging what's taken place and building on it, I think is the way to go. And Penny, I'm happy to give you the last word.
Honestly, I think from what I've seen, our teachers in adult education are amazing. They're so passionate and compassionate. They're compassionate about their learners. They're compassionate about their work, and they're willing to put in so much effort. And I just believe we should be there to support them. And I know we are, but I think that, as Carolyn said, we're not going back to what we were. We're going back to something that's shifted, that's changed. And we need to be able to support them and be flexible with them and be able to provide the resources and the support that they need. And I know that adult education is always going to be the one that can turn on a dime when they need to support our learners to help them reach their goals. So that's my final word, Marianne.
That's a good word, Penny. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for this, on behalf of this group, for having us. Thank you to the group who has been presenting. Now we want to hear from you guys. Have hung in there. Our 206 participants have hung in there, and now we really want to hear from you using the general chat box. And Bethel from COABE, if you can just confirm one last time for me that what we write in the chat box will be preserved. We'll have an archive of the writing. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Awesome. Okay, good, because I wouldn't want this to disappear. Okay, so we're going to try and experiment a waterfall chat. Every single 202 people left on this webinar, what we'd like you to do is I'm going to hit next slide, and there will be a question for you. We will not possibly have a chance to read through everyone, or maybe any of them, but we want to create a document as a result of this that tells a story that you're a part of in terms of what's taken place. So when I click next slide, I'll read out the question, and just as quick as your fingers will take you, if you can put your reply in the general chat, it'll be added as again, a sort of co-collaborative piece of work as a result of this webinar. So in the general chat pod, please describe how you adapted how your program adapted, how you adapted as an educator to offer wide-scale distance learning across program areas and levels. Answer this however you want. And so 1 minute, I think, is all we need. And I'm going to open the chat pod and hopefully see it blow up. A lot of Zoom. We all learned Zoom this year. that is.
We're starting to see the waterfall.
We're seeing the waterfall go. Yep. Thank you, everybody, for doing it.
Yeah, don't try to read it, gang.
I'm gonna, yeah, I was gonna at first, but I can see that's not gonna work. I see the word Zoom a lot.
Yeah, Blackboard, WebEx, Moodle. Yeah. Oh, this is great. And a few of you are posting answers in the Q&A. That is different than the chat. So if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little speech bubble there that says chat. You can copy your question that you put in the Q&A and paste it in that chat to add to our waterfall.
Thank you, Penny.
We want to capture all of this.
So, as promised, I'm gonna go kind of quick. So if you want to participate in this first waterfall, now's your chance to hit send on your message in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing it slow down, so I'm going to go to our next question. Our next question. All right, I'm going to go for it because we are running out of time. Second question. Based on what you just wrote, what you did, what challenge emerged and how did you deal with them? Again, you'll have 1 minute, so it's going to be a real sort of top of the head, tip of the tongue type response. Based on whatever you just wrote, what was the challenge that emerged as a result and how'd you deal with that challenge? 1 minute to respond in chat. And I did note, I don't know who the writer was, the note about challenges for lower level ESL. And I imagine it might be similar issues for low level ABE. Did see someone write the students knew more than I did about technology. And I am right there with you. So you're probably in good company. I'm your company at least.
There was another post about how she had never used Zoom, but she had a learner that had used Zoom at work and the learner taught her. So I'm like, that's great. That's really awesome. We all can learn something new. Very cool.
So I am going to go ahead and to the next question. We have 2 minutes and I think we're going to get under the, third question. You just wrote about the challenges in 1 minute. What success did you have that you want to build on going forward?
I like Shannon's notation of rainbows. You know, I've often said silver linings of all this, and she said rainbows. So I'm like, let's have silver linings and rainbows for this last 18 months.
And there's actually one, I know it's the end and it's Friday, but there's one more item after this that we want to hear from you on. So if it's okay with Bethel, I might go 1 minute over and you guys can keep on writing. So questions to guide inquiry and practice. We all embarked on the same big experiment over the past 1.5 years. And something that needs to be done is to really understand more about implications and effectiveness so that we can always get continually better as a field. And so part of our writing of the Calpro brief was the development of what we thought these sort of lingering to be told questions are. So we want to know what's the effectiveness and impact of distance and blended learning on student achievement. To what extent do these models improve or exacerbate issues of equity? Getting back to the focus on equity that Dr. Zachary mentioned. What differentiation and customization is needed for distance learning to be effective? What kind of differentiation and customization is needed for IET and other special programming? What professional learning is needed to sustain a large-scale ongoing effort? And what state-level policies and investment enable us to sustain an ongoing large-scale distance learning endeavor? These were our questions. They're in the brief. we want to know what you think. If you are speaking with researchers, federal policymakers, state policymakers, what do you, and to our fellow practitioners, what questions do you have? Do you think it's important for researchers and practitioners to consider so that we can build a better understanding together of the effectiveness of distance and hybrid learning models? So we had our questions, we don't have the answers. What are your questions? And for those of you who are hanging on, we'll just do one more minute. And I think our group will say goodbye and thank you. So questions that are important to consider. And how about if my fellow facilitators for today wouldn't mind coming back on camera. Carolyn, you started us off. I think it would be appropriate to give you our closing. You could close the bell. You rang the bell. Now you could close the floor as well.
Thank you so much, Marianne. And thank you to everyone who participated in this webinar. COABE does have a webinar poll up that they would like to have you answer. So if you could do that, it's a real quick little poll. But thank you. We hope that you have learned something, that you have a couple takeaways. I know that we've seen some great ideas and great thoughts in the chat that we'll be capturing. And so thank you again and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Christy, Penny, Toybe, Shannon, thank you. Bethel and our COABE team, if you want to need any housekeeping to wrap up, the floor is yours. Again, thank you, everybody. We really enjoyed being here.
Thank you.